Hello everyone, hello from beautiful Sacred Valley here in Peru, where I'm tuning in today in order to offer my contribution to a global campaign that is currently launching under the name of Thank You Plant Medicine. It is a campaign that encourages people to share their personal transformational experiences with plant medicine in order to support more awareness and more research and hopefully even more legalization of the use of plant medicine in therapeutic and medical circumstances in the Western world, something that is currently practiced here in Peru freely. So it is completely legal to take plant medicine here where I'm based. And I have explored it, and today I felt like it's a good occasion to share with you one of the most profound experiences in my life, which was my first meeting with Ayahuasca. So for that meeting, I felt personally called because just a couple of days after arriving here, I walked in randomly in this nearby village into the Ayahuasca center of one of the local shamans. His name is Alonso del Rio, and he's also a famous songwriter and musician, and also he's an author of some books. And what I found out when I inquired about the ceremonies that were taking place there was that he also contributes with the funds that he makes out of these ceremonies to the creation of educational centers for cultural awareness here in Peru, and also for reforestation in the Amazon region. And when I found out about this, I felt like it was really, there was something also in the environment and in the place and its energy that felt like, yes, really, I need to do this. And so just the week after, we decided to go there with my partner and to take our first ayahuasca sitting with him. It was quite interesting because we were not offered any kind of instruction or guidance before taking the medicine, nor received any kind of support afterwards. But throughout the ceremony, Alonso played some of the most incredible music I've ever heard, and really in that state of consciousness that ayahuasca creates, it's really easy to tune into the deep, beautiful guidance that sound and music can be to our experiences, not just in this space, but also in our lives. And I really, really appreciated that experience because in it, I got to connect to really what I like to refer to as the substance that this reality is made out of. My intention actually had to do with contribution, with basically just seeing what are the ways in which I can offer a deeper and wider impact with everything that I am and everything that I do into this world. And it was quite interesting because I received my answer, but I received so much more. And I'm going to actually go back to the beginning of my journey, in which I actually took ayahuasca, and within maybe 20-30 minutes after actually drinking it, it was like a small cup that looked like a little bit like a tea, and it tasted a little bit bitter. A little bit after taking it, I started feeling first like this heating up in my hands and in my torso, and it spread all over my body. And within minutes of that experience, I had this overwhelming feeling of, oh my God, there is nowhere to hide. There is nowhere to hide, because as I would close my eyes, I started feeling and seeing certain shapes emerging and certain things happening. And if I would open my eyes, I still felt like this reality was still there in the background. So even if I don't see it in the external world, it would still keep on playing within me. And I just remember telling myself over and over again, just trust this. I really felt like I have no other choice but to trust what was going to happen. And afterwards, basically what took place was really about 4 hours of deep introspective journey in which I really got to explore this substance of reality with which I was presented. And the first thing that really kind of stood out was the fact that it felt like this reality that I was seeing is sort of like it was feeling like everything that I know, everything that I've ever connected with in this physical reality was really emerging out of this substance, this underlying substance of which everything was made. And it was as if this world as we know it is just a denser form of that substance. And in that space, it felt that there was this infinite abundance, really infinite abundance of interweaving pattern and texture and shape that kept on just reshaping and moving and evolving deeper and deeper. And it was actually probably the deepest experience of infinity I've ever had. Like just whether it felt like I was just suspended in this endless space in which, like, if I would look down, if I would look forward, if I would do anything, it was just infinite. And it was not just infinite, it was infinitely creative. So it was like more and more of this substance emerging out of it. And actually one of the things I discovered very early on in this experience was that everything that was going on within this substance of reality receives immediately a response. And that basically that response looks like basically a ripple that continues on and on and on into infinity and dissipates in it and just becomes part of this substance. And at the same time, it felt like everything I would ask, every movement I would make would immediately be heard, be seen and be responded to. And you might ask, from what or from whom? Actually, this underlying substance had an inherent characteristic to it, which was that it was conscious. And it was not just conscious in itself, I perceived it as a collective consciousness. And that collective consciousness was extremely playful, wise, and benevolent at the same time. And it took me some time to find out this by asking some questions and basically engaging with it. But it didn't have any shape. It was not like a specific creature that was standing in front of me. It just really felt like something that was just really emerging out of this underlying substance of reality that I was suspended in. And I felt that this was actually, whenever I was referring to these beings, it was this collective intelligence I was speaking with, it felt like I understood that they were actually the creators of that substance and the substance itself at the same time. So that was a pretty interesting experience to have, especially coming from a culture in which, you know, there is God and there is, you know, all these different kinds of personifications of God and divinity that we have. And I played with that consciousness, with that intellect, by asking it some questions. And one of the things I was asking them was about my impact and my contribution, which was my intention. And what they showed me really was that in that reality that they were showing me, in this underlying substance of reality, everything was infinitely significant. Every single word, every single movement, every single gesture would have infinite ripples across space and time. And they were very playful at the same time. So they would show me, for example, how infinitely significant were the microorganisms and little creatures that were living in the bottom of the Mariana Trench, for example. And actually they made me cry with how beautiful and important these creatures were. And and at the same time, you know, I would ask them different questions, you know, about my direction. And when I would ask them about my direction, they were like, but what do you mean? Like, just take a look back at this reality. Take a look back at how infinitely significant everything is here. And then somehow the question of direction really dissipated. Then I asked them about shadow, about my shadow. I wanted to see my shadow. And they were like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to see it? And I was like a little bit afraid, but I was like, yeah. I really want to do this. And they just started joking with me. They were like, oh, shadow, what's a shadow? Does anyone know what's a shadow? You know, they were like really playful and engaging with me in that way. And, you know, eventually whenever I would ask them about my shadow or about something I was afraid of, they would just weave me back into this infinite reality in which I would understand that in order to really comprehend or even think about the concept of a shadow, I had to draw a boundary and say, okay, this is a shadow right over here in that infinite space. But that was not the nature of that space. I was shown that in a space of infinite significance and abundance, whatever might appear like a shadow in this limited context, as it ripples on and on, might turn into something positive. So it was kind of like really challenging my concept, my understanding, this mental idea of a shadow, and at the same time showing me how extremely natural it was, like how perfectly it was fitting into everything that was there. And this was also something that was very, very deep and beautiful for me. Another thing that they showed me was about what I like to call the 3 modes of creation. So the 3 ways in which things are being created in this substance of reality that we inhabit. And one mode of creation, it was in Bulgarian, so I'm gonna use the terms I received, but I'm gonna translate them. So one mode of creation, they showed it to me like tick, 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 tick. So it was like basically they were showing me that there's this very kind of fast-paced way in which things are very playfully just placed in random locations, like just basically seeded into random locations. And it felt like, almost like in a way, the world of ideas, but at the same time is the way that plants are being seeded. Like everything is being seeded in this kind of like fast-paced kind of way. So this was one mode of creation. Another one was a little bit slower, and they called it stökane, which basically translates into movement. So as things are moving around, they're generating ripples, and those ripples are generative and creative in themselves. So this was the second mode of creation. And the third mode of creation they showed me was about gushene mushene. It's in Bulgarian. That doesn't have a translation in English, but it's basically like hugging and sort of really kind of sliding off and rubbing off and touching and interacting in a very close and slow and dense way. And they showed me that that's also like this interaction is also something that is extremely creative and generative. And the last piece I feel like sharing with you today from my ayahuasca journey is about the experience of spiritual death that many people report to feeling when they enter in this space. And for me, that came in as just a felt and thought sense of, I actually might die right here, right now, having taken this. And when it appeared, when this thought appeared, I was just taken by these beings and just blown back into this incredible, vast, infinite substance. And I was shown how, just like I emerged from there, I'm going to return back there. And that's perfectly fine, and I'm just going to become part back once again of this beautiful collective consciousness that was so wise and so playful that I was interacting with. And I feel that by experiencing this, my next thoughts were, if this would be the reality of how death happens, I would be really happy to die right now. It was just an incredible, peaceful, beautiful act of surrendering back into the source from which I came. And I know I've been talking a lot, and much of this might not be making sense to you, but I really want to say that emerging from this experience, I could literally feel like my energy, some energy that apparently was not really in my body, had returned. I was not aware of that before, but like as I stepped out into the space, I could really feel like my body was stronger. I had much more clarity in myself, And there was this underlying magic and mystical aspect of this world that I had reconnected with, and that in which I was shown really much more than an answer to my question. And I have only experienced this once in my life, and I'm really looking forward to journeying back there. But until I do, I feel like I have a lot of work, really, of bringing more and more of these messages that I received into my work and into this reality. And I feel that sharing this with you today is supporting that. So I'm extremely grateful for those of you who have stuck around for this 15 minutes or so and really listened through this story. And I'm really curious to hear about your shares of what that is bringing up for you, and if you have any experience with ayahuasca or other plant medicine. I would really encourage you to not just comment but also take part of this international campaign, because I really feel that there is something of this shared consciousness that is not shared just with other people but with other beings, that is really manifested through this experience in a very deep and beautiful way, and allows us to step into deeper unity with every single thing and every single human and every single being that we end up interacting with in our lives, and really acknowledge this collective consciousness, this shared aliveness of all there is, and honor it in our journeys of life, really. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I wish you a beautiful day.